just finished editing together the intro. Now if you remember a few weeks ago, Enrico made a short film talking about how we were making the intro. And the intro, it was inspired by a filmmaker who's on YouTube, and he's called Dan Mace, and he has this crazy intro where you're kind of diving inside this kind of weird world that he lives in. And it's really nice to watch, and whenever I saw it I thought this is really cool, it'd be nice to make something similar, but I didn't really know how. And then another YouTuber, Audrey Ember, made a short video dissecting Dan's intro, and so you could see how it was made up, and this was really nice because it gave me the inspiration and a little bit of insight into how it would be done. She also made an intro that was really good. So the making of this intro was split into 3 parts. We had the part where we had to physically be together to create the stop motion animation with the paper, the part where I got all this video and edited it all together, and then the next part, which is still yet to be done, but will be done when you're watching this, is when I sent this to Enrico to say, let's get some audio on this. And so I'll talk to you about the creation of the stop motion and the editing. Obviously for us, we lie on the intersection between film and science, and so it was key to try and get this in our introduction. The first thing that we did when we were doing this was to go to this roll of paper that I have attached to my desk, and I don't know even how it came about, but we decided that we paint #SciFilmIt on and then have it pulled down. We have the pull down, we get the hashtag, and then we have a tear. We felt like it was a very dynamic start, and I felt very inspired when I came up with this idea. As you tear it, the Polaroid flies back in with the image of what's just been torn off. I thought that was really cool. So essentially all this animation was done on my desk here with the camera above here. This is the paper that was pulled out at the start. Stop motion was actually easier than we expected. We wanted to get this film and science ideas into the intro, so the key part of this was getting science journals and movie posters and have them kind of come together from the sides. And the idea was that they would scrunch up and they were drawn together by exposure, and when they explode, upon hitting each other, you have the exposure logo. And we felt like this was a very dynamic way to do this. Like Dan's video, we also wanted to get a definition in what does #SciFilmIt mean, and so after that it was just a case of masking the photos that we had taken, which takes a long time, but after keyframing, masking, eventually had something that could then be put over some films from previous years. And this is a nice little nod to some of the amazing stuff that's been created already. It was actually very challenging to try and get the movement in to be as natural as possible. And so that's something I spent some time working on. And also making it as clean as possible, because obviously the Polaroid comes in and it's the picture of the SciFilmIt sheet that we tore off. But then as you get closer, it actually changes to the original video where it's torn off. And so trying to get the change between it being the Polaroid and then the video layered on top of the Polaroid was quite challenging. Once it's been torn, it was just a case of masking and keyframing each part as it's torn away to get the films from previous years below. Then we could start to bring in the posters and the journal articles, and then the scrunch. It was so beneficial having Dan's and Audrey's videos to call upon for inspiration and like a little bit of insight to try and understand how I might do different parts of the post-production. It was then simply a case of trying to make it look as nice as possible by putting some effects on there, but also doing some doodles. It's an obsession of mine, and I felt like the SciFilmIt really needed to pop. Actually, that's not true. A friend of mine who I sent it to, she said, you know what, it's difficult to read it at the start, you should make it clearer. And so by drawing around it, SciFilmIt, it would become much clearer. And then I doodled on top of that because you kind of got, and it kind of felt like it needed to explode out. And so this is why I put the fire kind of coming out of it. And this was the last thing I did, I think. And then it was simply a case of exporting it and sending it to Enrico. and I was going to send you to Enrico as well.
Nice work, Robbie. Now time to have a look at the sound. Shall I say listen to the sound? Time to have a look at how I designed the sound for the intro. The sound is divided in two types. The sound effects of the objects, for instance when a piece of paper slides we hear a piece of paper sliding, and a song. So the song is played throughout the whole intro while the sound effects are played only according to the visuals. Let's talk first about the sound effects. Now for these I usually rely on a free library which is freesound.org. What I downloaded from this website are all the effects of the objects. So when the paper roll is being unrolled, I have the sound for it. When the Polaroid is coming up, I have the sound of a Polaroid being taken. Yes, look for it. And first little secret, you don't need to find exactly the sound of what you need. So in the case of the paper roll at the beginning of the intro, that's actually a curtain roll. In the end, I just needed some rolling basically. Going more into the details of the sound effects, well, whenever you are putting them into the soundtrack, you need to be careful. So usually the sound effect that you download is either longer or shorter than what you desire. Let's say that it is longer, so you want to cut it down. You go on Adobe Premiere Timeline and you just cut it, okay? But this is often going to introduce glitches that you have at the beginning or at the end of the sound effect where you cropped it. So in the timeline you right click on the sound effect, you go on Adobe Audition, and here you see the whole wave of the sound. Well, you usually see two waves because it's not mono, it's stereo. The difference here with respect to Premiere is that in Premiere the highest sensitivity that you have is the frame rate. If your timeline is set to 24 frames per second, you can modify sound up to 1/24th of a second. While in Adobe Audition, what you have is a much higher resolution. And what are we doing here? Well, the glitches are due to the fact that when we are playing the sound at the beginning or when it is finished at the end, the level of the volume is not zero. Now, here in Adobe Audition, we can go at the beginning of the track. We see that the wave does not start at zero volume. So we look, and here we see that it intersects the zero axis. So we're going to crop it here. We do the same at the end of the file. Now we go back on Premiere, and if we play it now, no more glitches. This gives a much clearer soundtrack. For the sound instead, what I did was looking at it on Epidemic Sound, the library of music meant especially for social media. Now, because it's a huge library, I had no idea where to start. So what I did was going back to Audrey's video, look in the description what song she picked, and I started navigating from there, as we wanted to give the same feeling, and which is in the end the same feeling that Dan Mace gave in his intro. What I was looking for was a song with a high rhythm and a really nice drop. You'll understand why. So once I got the song, I put it into the soundtrack of my video, and I actually paid attention on how to clip it according to what I just said like some seconds ago. The last thing that was left to do was setting properly the level gains. With respect to the level of the sounds, my recent experience in New York, where I made a film with a digital artist, really came handy. Now we want to set the volume in between -6 decibel and -60. So you don't want anything louder in particular, because you don't want the ears of your viewers bleed, right? We all agree here. What I did was for each track setting the peaks to -8 decibels. Then starting from there, I set individually the audio gain of each track, such that on average was played around -12, -13 decibels. I did this for the sound effects, while for the song I set the level even lower so that the song doesn't take over the effects. We still want to have the punchy effect given by the Polaroid sliding in, the paper being scrunched, and well, that's it in the end. So let it roll.